Talk Shoes. Recorded live.
All right, it's Mike, and it's Old Religion Dystopia, Knowing versus Belief. And we're going to be talking about things like the cult of the goddess of reason, alchemy, Mandelas, the gods, magical foundations of society, talismans, culture, magic, egregores, spelling as mind control, occult science, cosmic blueprints, I believe it is. Mind control, once again, controlling of emotions, controlling society, etc. Spirituality. Very interesting, I say. Welcome to all. Mahatma Coach and West Oklahoma, and etc. I want to start with reading just a little bit from good old the trusty Wikipedia. Cult of Reason. The Cult of Reason was an atheistic religion established in France intended to replace the Roman Catholicism during the French Revolution. It was one of history's first examples of state-sponsored atheism. Opposition of the Roman Catholic Church was integral among the causes of the French Revolution, and the anti-clericalism solidified into official government policy in 1792. After the First French Republic was declared, most of the de-Christianization of France was motivated by political and economic concerns, and the philosophical alternatives to the church developed gradually. Among the growing heterodoxy and the structural concepts of the culte de la raison became defined by Jacques Herbert. Who is Jacques Herbert? Hey, Jacques Herbert. Wow. Was a French journalist and founder and editor of the extreme radical newspaper La Pierre, I guess Dutchny, I don't know how you pronounce that, during the French Revolution. But even more than that, let's just check out one more thing here. I'll skip all the names because I'll just bastardize them. The philosophy, the cult of reason, was explicitly anthropocentric. Its goals was the perfection of mankind through the attainment of truth and liberty, and his guiding principle to this goal was the exercise of the human faculties of reason. In the matter of the conventional religion, it encouraged acts of congregational worship and devotional displays of the ideal of reason. And a careful distinction was always drawn between the irrational respect of reason and the veneration of an idol. There is one thing that one must not tire telling people, Moreau explained, liberty, reason, and truth are only abstract beings. They are not gods, for properly speaking, they are parts of ourselves. And I do want to get to this. So, revolutionary impact, the adherence of the cult of reason became a defining attribute of the Herbertist faction. And that was where I want to go to. The Herbertist faction was a radical revolutionary political group associated with the populist journalist Jacques Herbert. I guess I should pronounce his first name. He came to power during the Reign of Terror and displayed a significant role in the the French Revolution. Herbertists were ardent supporters of the de-Christianization of France and the extreme measures of service of the terror, including the law of suspects enacted in 1793. They favored the direct intervention of the state in economic matters in order to ensure an adequate supply of commodities, advocating a national requisition of wine and grain. The leader went to the guillotine on March 24, 1794. And now, a really cool essay, House of Mirrors. This is by Jose Maria Barrera. The only thing I can doubt is my awareness of the present. That is the undeniable fact. Consciousness exists. Everything else is a mystery. Awareness expresses itself as reality, a three-dimensional world where things occur in time. The origin of such awareness is unknowable and outside the realm of the consciousness. The milliard or billions, you would say today, legends have been imagined trying to explain this mystery. But behind their dogmatic arrogance, the fact remains that they are just tales. That fundamental mystery and that fundamental certainty constitutes the basis of all wars, all religions, and all philosophies. The mystery is the source of all our anguish, the certainty of our reason for hope. We are lost and lonely creatures trapped in the house of mirrors, trying to catch a glimpse of ourselves in the distorted mirages that surround us. Once again by Jose Maria Barrera, and he is our guest today, along with Nino. Gentlemen, thank you for listening to me, and thank you for joining me. Hola, 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 Jose.
Hey, how are you?
Un café spilled all over my computer. Hey, my ex-wife was Portuguese, half Portuguese and half East Timorese. I met her in England, and she came from Mata. And anyways, I discovered that the Brazilian Portuguese, and the Portuguese in Portugal are two different languages, basically. I tried to learn it, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. But anyways, I learned about aguardente, firewater, moonshine, and became a drunk in Portugal. So, yeah, pretty cool. It sounds like you're back in the glorious state of New York.
Yeah, I live in Manhattan now.
My goodness. Well, Manhattan, what a place to be, man. That's awesome. And then we got on the others, well, in the mountains, there we have Nino. How you doing, man?
Great. Good morning, guys.
Good morning to you. So, yeah, man, we got a lot to talk about. And Jose, you're fascinating. You've got a fascinating take on things, and a very simplistic, or not necessarily simplistic, but logical and rational, reasonable approach to life here. What I want to ask you a few questions before we get going. We talked a little bit before the show. So your religious influence as a child was the Roman Catholic Church. Interestingly enough, after just reading about the cult of reason. What would be your other influences as a child? I mean, what caused you to start questioning and looking a little deeper into things like magic? Considering, apparently you had a background in science, right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, in engineering.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny, right? Because I think what your weakness is what defines you and what makes you who you are. So I have a cognitive problem, and it's that I'm highly dyslexic, and it was never treated in any way when I was growing up. So it made me try to cope with the world in different ways and look at reality in different ways. So I think the source of the way I look at or the source of who I am today, right, is I'm deeply indebted to that that what you would call a weakness, which I don't see it as a weakness, simply a different way to see the world. And
but, by the way, we share the same situation, being dyslexic. It was much easier for me as a child to read backwards, believe it or not, and all the exercise and all that. So I think that's why I focus so much on art and music. But go ahead.
It's fascinating. I was listening you reading. I couldn't read for the for my life up loud. I couldn't do that. But like, if I start, I'm going to start stumbling into words, and then I read and I jump from one line to another, and I skip words, and then I don't remember half of what I read. Very interesting.
You know what helped me read, of all things, was reading the Bible. I didn't comprehend what I was reading, but I was, yeah. So
I think
school didn't help me.
School is useless. But I think that was a big part of my the other part that has, right, is that my eye-body coordination is horrible, which means that I suck at sports. So. Don't you play tennis or something like that? Don't you still do something? Or did you at some point when you were younger? I used to play a little tennis, but nothing serious. But okay. The interesting thing about that, right, is that all of my friends when I was growing up in high school were playing soccer and things like that. So they were just like yelling behind a ball. Then what I was doing is I was reading philosophy and pondering the universe. So I think that's another part. You see, I was not in the clique. So when you're not part of the clique, what you do is you question it.
Well, you're talking to a couple ex-punkers here, so yeah, we know about it being in the fringe. So, so being part of that fringe and being a little different and being a little awkward kind of forced you to look at the world differently. So you felt that you're a little different, and so you were. And what a blessing that is when you think about it. So, Nino, do you have any questions that you would like before I dominate this?
I don't have any questions yet.
Okay.
It's awesome. It's awesome hearing hearing this story, because then for myself, I can sit back and kind of revisit my life's experience and what forced me to the fringe, why I chose to go to the fringe, why I ran to the fringe, whatever circumstances, and that my weaknesses definitely defined me in my life, or have over history. So yeah, this is great to listen to right now. I don't have any questions currently, but it's resonating strongly.
Cool. Yes, looks like we got somebody. Hotma Coach says it's 4 p.m. here. He's back, and that means I think you're in England, I believe he is. So we got someone from England here. Let's go a little further into this. So what caused you to start looking into? Let's talk more about what caused you, Jose, to start looking into, I guess, magic and the alchemy and hermetics and all that kind of stuff. I mean, what was the? I know we talked a little bit about your dyslexia and being a little different and not really fit into things, but I mean, you could have looked at something else. I mean, this is kind of different. I mean, did you have people in your background that maybe that knew something about this?
Nope, not really. So my father and my grandfather were engineers. So I was always educated and instructed on the art of reason. And as I mentioned before, my family was not very spiritual in any way. Just they went through the motions of Catholicism, like most Catholics, but they were not religious at all. but I always had one question, and to me the biggest question there is what is consciousness? And since I was a kid, I was like surprised and mesmerized by the very fact of existence. I was like, this is so weird. Why am I here? Where do I come from? Right? Like those fundamental questions. And who am I? And I was obsessed with this idea of consciousness. Like, why am I aware of things? And I think the poem that you were talking about, that speaks a lot about that, like this quest that I had since I was a child. Of trying to figure out, like I feel like I'm lost in a house of mirrors where there is this awesome place. It's a dream where I am, and everything every day, right? Nature surprises me, and this is awesome and miraculous. And I look at my arms, and I see that I have like 5 elongations at the end of my arms, and we get used to that. But when you think about it, it's deeply, deeply weird. The fact that we have arms and that we can talk to each other right now, right? And we're in front of computers. And existence in general is so surprising and beautiful and miraculous, but we get accustomed to it, and then we go for petty little things. And I don't know, my bed is not made, or the coffee was cold this morning, or there was a traffic jam, and then we get distracted with little petty problems, and we forget how miraculous all this thing is, and what a mystery it is, and how fortunate we are to be able to experience this, because in another place we couldn't be even existing here. So that's always been to me this quest for trying to see who I am and where I come from and why things are the way they are. And that brought me into, well, my background was my father, my grandfather, my family of people that are rational and engineers, and try to use that tool to understand the world. And I think it's a beautiful and big tool. And so that took me to read philosophy, and I read a lot of Western philosophy when I was growing up. And then I ended up studying computer science and systems engineering. And I ended up coming here to New York, and I ended up working at NYU Medical Center at the Department of Physiology and Neuroscience, doing models of brains and things like that, because my quest was always, what is consciousness? And if you're rational, right, and you gave up religion at some point, then what happens is that you think, so what I'm going to do if I want to find what consciousness is I have to start dissecting brains, and so I can capture consciousness and take it out and study it. And that was my obvious approach to things, right, being a rationalist. And then with time, I realized that that's a futile attempt to try to find what existence is, because every time you dissect a living creature and open up their brains and look at it, all you find is a pound of flesh, but the mystery itself is not there. And the more you dissect and open things, the more it goes away from you. So at the end, what ended up happening is that I came to a realization that that was the wrong path to study who I am, and I decided that the right approach was to study myself in a very particular way. It's like, what is the tool that I have to understand the world? And I realized, well, the tool we have is language. And I ended up reading a scientist from the early 20th century called Arthur Eddington, who was a British Sir Arthur Eddington, and he was a physicist, and he has a couple of fascinating books. And in one of them, and this marked me very deeply when I was like in my late 20s, I was reading his book, and he has a quote about a little town where ichthyology is the study of fish. So imagine that there is this little town of fishermen, and what they want to know is they want to know what is the nature of the fish, and they're scientists. So what they do is they create a net, and every day, and the net has holes of 1 inch, the size of 1 inch, and every day they use the scientific approach to try to know and determine the nature of the fish. So they go and cast the net in the water and bring back fish, right, and measure them, and do that for many, many, many years. And then after doing all the observation and all the information that they had and all that, they concluded that the smallest fish in the ocean, right, is 1 inch long. But so it's beautiful, right? Because you think about it, the nature of what we know is given by the nature of the tools that we have to know. So these guys, by casting a net that had holes of 1 inch, the size of 1 inch, the only fish that they could catch were fishes bigger than 1 inch, and then the conclusion that they came to is that the smallest fish was 1 inch long. But that's not a property of the fish, it's a property of the net. So by studying the net, they could have concluded that without doing any of the experimentation that they did before. And I think that's a beautiful analogy to language, because the tool that we have to question and to try to understand the world is language. But one thing that we never do is study what is the nature of language. And my feeling is that one of the things that we do the most is we project the limitations of our tool of understanding, that is language, into the world. So we end up creating these artifacts in nature, outside, in reality, that do not exist. And there are these phantoms that we create, but they are side effects of the tool that we have to measure the world, which is namely language.
Yes, indeed. Language, man. Where do I go from here? It's just like, okay, we're done. No, I'm just kidding. It's language, the power of language, the power of symbolism, the power of these. Tell us. Let's go a little different direction here, but it ties in obviously. Alchemy and language. What's the connection there?
Okay. So I think that one thing that, because of this idea of reason that we have, and let me tie it back to language and reason, one of the things or the virtues of modernity, right, is that we want to be as precise as we can with language. So if you think about mathematics, right, mathematics is a quest to create the most precise definition of things. So when you create a mathematical hypothesis, what you do is you create theorems and you define terms, and you can have no ambiguity on your terms. And that's the power of mathematics, is that you can create very precise descriptions of reality expressing number. So the beautiful example of that, right, is a photography, right? Like you look at what a photography today is a bunch of zeros and ones, one against the other, right? One after the other. And that comprises, the whole thing is a mathematical description in a long chain of numbers of an image that you took, or a movie, or a song. So it's very precise. But the problem with language, or the problem with mathematics, or being that precise, is that you lose something else, and is the power of ambiguity. So I think that's something that is new, right? Like, or not new. It's been with us for a long time, but it was not the only way to understand things. So when you read, you're very accustomed to the Bible, right? The Bible and these ancient books of wisdom, they were written in a language that was not precise. They were written in parables, right? Like so when you look at at sacred books from antiquity, they are telling you stories that convey something else. So what they're doing is they're creating an image for you that is very rich, but it's not precise. So they're using this symbology to convey something to you that is not what is literally written down there. And the problem with us is that today, when we look backwards and we look at sacred books, say, we try to interpret them literally. So there are two camps there. There are some people who accept them literally, right, and believe that there was a talking snake 4,000 years ago or whatever is the number, that gave an apple to Eve or whatever is the story, and they believe that literally. And then there is another camp of people who take the book literally as well, and what they say is, no, it is nonsensical to have a talking snake. Therefore, I reject that book. But you see, what they did is, because of the lack of understanding of another way to interpret the book, which is namely non-literal, they just discarded the whole thing. And then the people who are deeply into, say, Christianity, right, and the deep atheists, at the end, they're having conversation at a very basic lower level, that is this literal level, where one of the bands of these teams accepts that at face value, and the others reject it at face value. But the real wisdom and inner meaning of this book was lost in translation, basically. So the same thing happens with alchemy. And then if you take alchemy at face value and literally, it is the science or the art of transmuting base metals into higher metals. So taking lead and transmuting that and converting that into gold. And you can take that literally. And you can say, but that's nonsense, right? Like, you cannot take, especially now with all the physics and chemistry that we know that that's a futile attempt, and you cannot take lead and transmute it into gold and all this. But these people are missing the point, because in reality, when you talk about metals, what these alchemists were doing is they were not talking about metals. They were using metals as a metaphor to something else, and namely the aspects of consciousness. So when they come and start talking about like the alchemical wedding and all these different processes of alchemy, what they are doing, right, is they're talking in allegories about something else, which same thing in the tradition of antiquity on everything, right? Like you look at the Greek gods, the Greek myths, they're not literal. And I don't think that the people in the know at the time took that literally anyway. Now, the peons and the peasants who went to the temples and gave offerings, I bet, just like today, they believe literally that Zeus existed and all this. Just the same thing that happens today with the people who take religion at face value. But the people in the know knew that they were allegories to deeper messages and deeper ideas. So, yeah, that's my take on your question, I think.
Well, it's interesting. Deeper ideas and the connection between just a couple of things you just brought up, like the religious aspect. What is religion? But nothing more than mind control. Language. It's interesting. You bring it up, and you brought it up numerous times. So I'm going to read it. It's actually in the beginning of one of your poems too. I don't know if that's alone. No, which one is it? Anyways, John chapter 1, the Gospel according to John. It says, in the beginning was the Word, was the language, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And the same was in the beginning with God, and all things were made by Him, and without Him was not anything made that was made. In Him was life, and life was the light of man. And the light shineth in the darkness, and the darkness comprehended it not. And you look at the power of language. You look at the power. I mean, this is the other things you just brought up there. It brings up the power of language, gematria, the use of numbers to quantify things, reductionism, all sorts of things that we can go down here. But the power of language, the mind, the consciousness, what does all this mean? There seems to be like a duality in life. There's one of the things that I think of when I think of duality, it's just my own concept, and that is of the physical, three-dimensional experience that we have, and then there's what is going on between our ears. And a lot of times they're not in sync. In other words, I'm thinking about one thing but doing something completely different. Say I'm working on my wildflower gardens, and while I'm doing that, I don't know, having an imaginary conversation with what I believe to be the source of creation, or maybe I'm having an argument with somebody that's not even there. You know what I mean? What is going on there with this duality of the physical plane, the existence that we live in, and then the mental, or I mean, maybe we should start out with even defining what spirituality is, because there's so many different ways of looking at it, and one of the things that it's one of the most vaguest terms that there is. And ultimately, I mean, it's one of the interesting things of the conversation you had with Jan Irving there in Gnostic Media is the spirituality, or the spirit. It's the same. Basically, it's us. It's we're the spirit, right? We're the when we're conversing with some kind of spiritual entity. Is it just us? Is there a dimension that's beyond us? Is there really? I mean, because ultimately, this is how I see things. With this, the world is just operated by symbolism, magic. What is magic? Forms of mind control, manipulation of the environment and others. But is there more to it all? And it's realizing that the ruling elite of the empire that we all live in are using these sources of magic, sorcery, etc. Can we use those same principles and ideals to, since we can't really change what's, I don't see, I mean, we look at the French Revolution and what its impact was, and although it certainly enlightened us in different ways through that, but and it challenged the paradigm of the time, it didn't really change things dramatically enough where it liberated the individual man. And this empire there, this system that we live under, it's just the changing of the guards, but nothing more than that I see, ultimately. So how can we use what you know to combat those forces that surround us, that build that moat, that wall around us, and keep us from really being the individual that we're supposed to be, or could be.
Gotcha.
You got me. You got me. Wow, that's great.
So it is curious, right? Like going a little bit back on what you were saying, right? You start reading John, and in the beginning it was the Word, and the Word was with God, and God was the Word, and the Word was God, right? You read that, and what is fascinating, and this is just a little tangent, is that in the West, we're the people of the book, right? And we're obsessed with language, and we think that language is the source of everything. But you compare this, for example, with Eastern philosophy, and you take, for example, the Tao Te Ching, and the way the Tao Te Ching, right, what Lao Tse starts, is the Tao that can be named is not the real Tao. So you see a dichotomy, how deep the difference is? In one side, they're saying the word is everything. And in the other one is what you can name is not the real thing. So it's a perfect dichotomy between, and if you imagine the world as two hemispheres, the planet, right? You have one hemisphere that is the rational side of the brain, and the other one that is the irrational, say, like allegorically. Is exactly that. We have that partition in the East and the West, because the way to attain enlightenment on the East, right, is, and they have all these techniques, is by quieting the mind, by reducing language and becoming one with what you are, removing the filter that you put with language and all the preconceptions and concepts that you put in between. On the other side, for us, the people of the book, what we want to do is we want to create stories to narrate everything and being able to describe everything and psychoanalyze everything and try to create explanations for everything in language. which is exactly the opposite techniques to try to come to the same thing, which is, I find that fascinating, right? Is that dichotomy and how you can see, right? So if you think about it, the attempt that you're trying to do is futile, and it's that you're trying to explain the irrational with reason, but that's a contradiction in terms, right? Like the irrational cannot be explained rationally, because if it could, then it wouldn't be rational. It's quite paradoxical. Now, how can you use this, or what is happening with language, right? And did something change in the French Revolution with this? And I think the answer is very simple: no. What I think that it was a coup, where a group of people, namely the merchants, took absolute power and removed or relegated to second place the religious and the military, and controlled them, right? Because what you see at the time of the French Revolution, what you had is that you had these kings like Louis XVI who were highly indebted with the merchants, and finally they lost control, and the control was given to the merchants. But what the merchants did is they secularized religion and created this secular system of power, namely democracy, which is perfect, right? Because when you think about rational system, rational comes from ratio, which is basically a comparison of two numbers, right? And so basically they gave absolute supremacy to the number and the quantities and measurement, and then the perfect system of governance in a society that takes the number as its highest value is democracy, because democracy is basically government by numbers, right? So that's what happened. Now, how can you use these to liberate yourself? So, and I think that's the problem, is that if only you and I know this, right, then the spell continues because everybody believes in it. And the only reason why I do and I put these ideas out is because I think this is the antidote for people to understand what is happening. So when you have a kid in the front row and the magician is doing a trick and the kid starts screaming out, "Hey, look, he has, like, the hat has a hole and he's hiding a rabbit in the hat," right? Then two things happen. The magician wants to kill that kid, but second is, like, the illusion collapses. So I think people, as long as people believe in the system exists, because the source of the existence of the system is belief, is faith. So when you start showing people what the system is for what it is, and it's a very painful process to do that, because people have all these emotional attachments, right? And it's very painful for people to recognize this. But as long as they do that, and that's the way the system protects itself, as long as they do that, then we're going to be tied together into this system. So the only way that we humans are going to liberate from being slaves is the day we don't want to be slaves anymore. And that's a hard thing to do. I don't know if that's going to happen, but the only way I see that can happen is by showing the obvious to people, right? And it's that we are enslaved by magic, right? By these rituals and these groups of people who enslaved us a long time ago.
Right. You're looking at, it makes me think of things like the West Indian Company, the Dutch West Indian Company, or the British East Indian Company. This whole thing about the merchant classes and how they were encouraged and used for the colonization of the known world. Interesting too is this: you talk about the East and Western Hemisphere in this plane of existence that we live. It's like it's almost like it's deliberate, isn't it? I mean, it's wasn't there like it's beyond organic. Let's put it that way. That there be the dividing of the hemispheres, if you will. And if we look at the Western Hemisphere and Latin America, the North America, all of it's dominated by Western Europe. We're just an extension of it, really. So what is it? Go back to the independence and to breaking away from the spell, because I don't believe at all that this is a social movement. This is an individual movement. This is the only way it's going to work, and we can't dictate or cause other people to change. Something has to happen in their lives. I mean, I look at my own life and all the things that, I mean, if I was in control of and dictating the way things are going, or the way my life, way I wanted my life to be, you and I wouldn't be talking right now. So, I mean, there's some kind of outside influence, something that determines whether or not you and I even get to this point. But it goes even further than that. Is like, what is it? Individually, when we talk about Magik, and we talk about, because this is what I see. This is how I see it. It's for whatever it's worth. It's probably not worth much anything, but I mean, for me, it's like, okay, I have always had the need, the urge for independence, not to follow the herd, not to follow the pack, to for whatever reason. And I guess one of the ways that I go about my own direction is through art and music, physical things. I look at when I'm in my creative process, I'm not thinking, I'm just doing. I'm in action. There's thought that initiates it. The whole idea of, okay, I'm going to make some kind of statue today, or I'm going to make an abstract painting, or I'm going to make a surrealistic painting, or I'm going to write a song, and it's going to be whatever, mixed between whatever. But then I go about doing it, and it never turns out the way I think. If I let it go, the best stuff that I ever do is when I just act upon it. And that seems to be, the creative side seems to be, when we look at, when we let go, I don't know how it is for you, but when I let go and just do, there's a lot more joy. But in the world that we live in, of reason and rationalization and everything else, is that, everything has to be designed, and everything has to be blueprinted out, you know what I mean, to the detail. All the right corners and everything else has to be, but I just don't function in that world, and I think there's a lot of, I think what we're experiencing in this oppressive scientific dictatorship kind of thing is that it's crushing what makes us human. And
correct, yeah, that's the thing, right? When you become a number, you lose your humanity because you become a number, right? You become a human resource.
Yeah, and I'm not very good at that. I'm not good. I was never good at corporate America. I was never good in this fascist corporate system. I can't function in it. It's just, it crushes my soul, and maybe for whatever reason, why three of us talking right now, it's because of that, because of the fact that we don't quite fit in, and for whatever why? The question is why. This is very deep. This is how I see it, and wherever it leads, this conversation, and hopefully we have several of them, is going to lead wherever it goes. If we just don't try to control it, manipulate our conversation, and try to make it real structured, I think we're going to get to a point where we're going to actually have some greater insight. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I think these conversations, and one of the reasons why I do them, is because I learn a lot from these conversations, from others and from myself, right? I have very good ideas and insights when I hear other people talking. So to me, it's a great thing. And part is ego. I learned this. So I do for living. I write code. I write software for living. And at the beginning, I was very protective of my own code, and I wanted things to be written in one way and one way only. And what I realized as time goes by, right, is that when you give the benefit of the doubt to other people and you let them do things, right, what you realize is that the aggregate of you and a group of people working together is way bigger than what you on your own could ever conceive, right? All you have to have is trust on others and try not to control and dictate what the outcome is, and let everyone play their part, and then you get beautiful results at the end. And I think teams fail when you try to constrain them, right? And then just the idea of one is what is imposed on the team and things like that. But I think a good team of people, a good group of people working together is beautiful, and the power of that is incredible.
Well, it's yeah. I mean, for my experience, this music has probably been the greatest example of that for me. And that's a smaller group, a handful, a platoon, if you will, of people. It seems that we work better in small groups of less than a half a dozen than we do with in teams of half a dozen. Than big groups, where the bigger the group is, the more it seems the need for centralization of power. And a great example for me would be, say I go to the church down the road, and it's Sunday morning, and we're at worship service, and it's the main service and all that, and the people on stage are basically doing all the action, all the work, and controlling the group, getting them working on their emotions, and dictating for an hour. I mean, it's one of the finest examples of mind control, where you have the band, you have the pastor who's got the 15-minute message to make you feel like a pile of crap, and that you need to pork the money, and everybody standing up in unison, singing and everything else, and or maybe it's as your example as a Roman Catholic, the ritual as far as the up and down prayer, kneeling, recanting the same old prayers that have been determined for hundreds of years what you're going to say. Anyways, it seems to me that's the way. But the most fulfilling experiences that I have in my life, I'm almost 50, has been either one-on-one interaction or a smaller group. Like I said, less than a dozen, a half dozen, not a dozen, half dozen, probably more like 3, 4, 5 people, or better yet, making love to a beautiful woman. I mean, just one-on-one type of thing. That's what really the great moments and meaningful moments have been. And look at man and woman. Once again, the hemisphere. You were talking about the left and right hemispheres and the different, the Eastern religions and the Western religions. And, how did this dualistic existence happen? Is it natural? Is it always been this way? Is there really? Should we just embrace it, accept it, or do we try to rebel against it? I mean, I could ramble on and on here. I'm sorry, Jose, but
no problem. It's fascinating.
Yeah, you are too. And you really provoke a man to think. If anything else, you provoke folks to think. I listened to the conversations you had with John Adams and Chris Kendall, and just the different, or Jan or whoever. It makes a man think. You definitely make a man think, and
thanks.
So let's talk about this this dualistic nature.
Okay, fascinating. So yeah. I think the first mistake that we have, right? The first misconception that we have is that we live in a material world, right? Like Madonna said, we don't. Our world, we don't live in a 3D space time world. That's not where we live. We show up there, but we live in a world of concepts and imagination and ideas. So, and we happen to use our corporality to move around. But in reality, if you think where you are, right, you're in the world of your imagination. So we live in a world that is not material and is not physical. And so when you see objects in the world, say I'm in front of a cup of coffee right now, right? That cup is only, if you think about it, it's just a swarm of colors and sensations and things that is happening momentaneously, right? And then it dissolves and it goes, it's a process that happens through time. But the concept of the cup of coffee is only linguistic. Is what we did is we took language and we froze in time. We took a snapshot of our perceptions and we named it. And we captured that, and we with that frozen concept, right? That's what we use to operate around. But those concepts do not exist outside. They are just part of our psyche. It's the tool that we use to understand things. Now, this dichotomy, when you talk about this duality in the world, that's a property of consciousness. Imagine if there were no differences in reality, you wouldn't exist. Because what makes you exist is that there are differences. So I think this idea of language is very intimate in the sense that when you name something, what you're doing is you're capturing the sense difference that you have. But every time you create a name, you split reality in two, like with a knife, right? When I say table, what I took was the universe. That is this continuum of emotions and colors and sounds and all these different dimensions that we capture with our senses and our imagination. And when I say table, what I did is I took the whole of the universe and I split it in half. And I created two categories. The category of what is a table and everything else. So I took, every time you name something, what you're doing is you're slicing reality into two opposite sides. And that's the nature of language. But if you think about it, that's not what the nature is, right? Like nature at the end is just a continuum. So this difference is an imposition, is a cognitive imposition that we have. In order to cognize, to know what we have is this idea of perceiving differences. And because that's the way we understand the world, then we ascribe that to the world, and then we name things. So I think it's very deep, right? When you think about that, and so if you take this to the bottom, to the extreme, right? What you end up is what you have in Eastern philosophy, that is the yin and the yang, right? The black and the white. Or in Western philosophy, if you take it, right, we digitize the world. So we divided everything into zeros and ones, into to be or not to be. And that's the very bottom of what we're doing. At the end, you're talking about the same on both sides, right? When you see the unity is divided into black and white, right? It's an allegorical way to say the same thing as I'm digitizing the world, and the world is made out of differences. But if you think about it, that's our imposition. What we're doing is, and that's when you read the poem that I wrote a long time ago, when I talk about this house of mirrors, what is happening is that we live in a world that is the creation of the limitations of our perceptions. So what we're doing is when you walk around, all you can do is look at the limitations of our cognitive system. So you're always trapping yourself, looking at the world around, but all you can see is reflections of who you are. Is that clear?
Yeah, it is exactly. Yeah, that's makes me well. I guess before I go on, man, Mahatma quote asks, what does Jose think about the magic spell of nuclear annihilation and the effect it had and has on culture creation? I know these were. What do you think about that? The magic spell, the nuclear annihilation, and the effect it had and has on culture creation. Because that's one of the things that, as I discover and look and journey into the whole thing. If we're on the same page here, is like the whole thing that happened in Hiroshima and Nagasaki was a construct, an illusion that happened 70 years ago, and that they've used that as a form of control on the masses, of worrying about global, if you will, global annihilation through nuclear weapons. And a lot of us, our research was leading to the realization that it didn't happen the way they said it happened. In other words, after 70 years, knowing how the psychopaths that kind of rule our existence, it's becoming highly dubious that it even happened the way they said it did. So, in other words, use of fear to control the masses.
Right, that's the ultimate power, right? But that's not something new, right? Like the wrath of God, right? You can read in the Bible where he, with a lightning strike, destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, right? Doesn't that sound like very similar to Hiroshima and Nagasaki? Didn't you just supplanted the all-powerful mighty God for the all-powerful U.S. of A?
Yeah, that's an interesting thing in itself.
Just to cleanse all sins. And I never thought about that, but now that you mention it, that's the first thing that came to mind was exactly that, right?
Yeah, fear of total annihilation, of destruction, a hopelessness, a helplessness of. But if you look into that particular those incidents, you're going to find the Jesuits were involved, and firebombing and all sorts of things, and the whole use of Teaoneaux and all that kind of stuff. So, but this goes back to what I want to go back to is this, because the spiritual power that I see is within oneself and one's imagination, and the controlling of one's own thoughts and emotions. And isn't this not the alchemy that all man really wants, is to control? While he's on this plane of existence, controlling his own experiences, his own thoughts, to be some kind of, to create an influence, maybe a memory for the future generation type of thing. When you talk about ego and all that kind of thing, it's not necessarily a bad thing, the ego, if it's channeled in the right or in a constructive instead of destructive manner. So, and it seems to me that we as humans are either we can be very destructive or we can be very constructive. And it's like a need that man has as the builders, the need to build something, to create something, as the extension of the mind and the body, and it seems to me that this is the whole idea that the oligarchy, the power, the elites, if they call them, are trying to do is to oppress this very human existence of what we are. Of being creators, of being builders of our own imaginations, and there's no need for homogeneity and to make everything very. Because they have to control everything. They have to control everything about us. And but the most freeing moments are when we are not allowing that to happen.
Hey, correct. I was thinking about something that you said a moment ago, and it's that the most fulfilling moments that you can remember in your life, right, is when you've been with a woman, right, with someone else, or with a group of people. And I think what is interesting about Magik, right, is that because we live in this world that is not a world of objects or matter, but our reality is a reality of psyche, right? Of psychical energy flowing. The art of magic is to create resonance. And what happens is that we, because we're social beings, right? What we do is that we resonate when we're with other people, right? And we're with people that we're akin to. What happens is that we create resonance, right? So I have children, and when I am with my children, that are right, and my family and my wife and my friends, I have these beautiful experiences because we resonate, right? When you're in tune with them, or just like with a band of musicians that you're playing with, what you're creating is something that transcends you, that is bigger than who you are, right? And you become part of this. So I think this idea that we are gregarious is deeply ingrained on that. And so I think one of the beauties that we have, right, is that we can resonate with each other. But what had happened is that some usurpers have hijacked that and used that resonance, right, to their own advantage. So what they have done is they have created this artificial culture, and we are basically cultivated since we're kids, right, to resonate is with the symbols, the artificial symbols put by the society, right? So they can exploit us and take our energy out. But that resonance, that empathy, that we have with other people, right? That willingness and longing for resonance with others.
Jose, you're having a bad. You're really breaking up bad. So all of a sudden, see, are you moving around or?
No. Is it better? Is it better now?
No, it's not. Hey, listen. I hate to do this, but hang up and I'll call you right back to see if that works.
Okay.
Gotta clear up the line here.
Okay.
Okay. As it seems to happen when things are going cool. Well, I don't know, man. Nino, what do you think?
Oh, this is great. This is like $300 an hour therapy for me. Seriously, I mean.
I love his picture. You see that? The I gotta ask.
That's spooky, but yeah, I don't.
Hello.
Hey, man. Sounds a little better now.
Is that better? Okay. I don't know. The internet.
Yeah, something like that. So, hey. By the way, before we get what's up with the picture that you have there, man? The double head.
I just made that a long time ago. I thought it was cool.
It's not. It doesn't have any reference to the double-headed phoenix, does it? Okay.
Just learning to use Photoshop.
It's good. It's a great illusion. Hey, go back to what you were saying. I'm sorry.
Right. So I don't know where I broke. Right. I was talking about you were talking about the transcendent moments in your life, right?
Yes.
And it usually meant shared experience with someone else or a group of people. And I think so because we're social gregarious creatures, right? We have this longing for these moments, right? That's what makes us whole is to transcend ourselves and become part of something bigger. And I think that's what you get with these group experiences that you have, right? So what we do is we resonate with other people, and this resonance gives us extreme satisfaction, right? And that has been hijacked by a group of people who have created these artificial resonances that they put on us, namely, say, the allegiance to the flag, right, or the national anthem, or all these patriotic symbology, and all these cultural symbols that what they do is they make us feel that we're part of something bigger than we are. So what they have done is they have taken these natural tendencies that we have for gregariousness and being part of something bigger, and they have hijacked that and have supplanted that need that we have for community, right, and the longing for being with others and resonate with others, and that has been supplanted with these cultural symbols, basically. So that's what I was saying when I broke.
All right. Well, that makes me think of this. It makes me think of the assault of the the city state, is that what you call it? The city, the empire, the city type of thing. Where it's like it's against our instincts to be part of these giant metropolises, these giant artificial environments. You were talking about San. Where was it you were at again in Brazil?
Sao Paulo.
Thank you, St. Paul. And you said it was about 22 million people living there.
Yeah. For some reason, I'm attracted to big metropolis, right?
Well, the biggest city I ever lived in was in London, but that was a different kind of experience. It's all just giants, basically spread out. Nothing. But anyways, that's a different story. The thing is the how do I say this? But it's just like an unnatural, controlled, contrived environment that's an assault on our instincts and who we are. And it seems to me that we have a hard time, or they, or whatever. Oh, we in general, because of how we've been indoctrinated, have a hard time expecting or accepting the human side of us, not the humanistic, but the human side of it. Because even the humanist they got a lot of those problems, but the fact that just accepting who we are, the natural man, if you will. There seems to be a hate, a disdain for who we are, who we really should be. And again, it goes to the question of who am I to say who we should be? But if I look at myself, another part of feeling fulfilled is when I'm connected to nature somehow. Going somewhere where there is nature, there is native fauna, animals, plants, whatever. You know what I mean? There's some of the most spiritual moments I ever had is like seeing a grizzly bear or a moose or a elk or even a weasel. You know what I mean? It's like, but then they also look at it oneself, and I know for me, my little place, one of the things that I'm doing to create my own little cave, if you will, my own little environment is art and doing different things to not only hang on the walls, but along with my son, because I'm a full-time single dad, but just creating art, creating things, creating our own environment. I look at different cultures, and one of the most wonderful things about different cultures and diversity in culture, true diversity. You won't. We're not talking about this multi-diversity what Western civilization calls it, but true diversity where not only the town or the city has its own identity, but the individual can have his own identity, and whether it's art or the books that one reads or the things that one does. And it's like I have to say, first of all, Jose, this feels like a $150 an hour psychotherapy session. So it does for me. And the other thing is that it's not only trying to understand my environment, but who I am in this this maze of concrete and boxes and that people live in, and trying to make some meaning out of it,
You know what I find fascinating is that I think that's the quest of every one of us is exactly what you're saying, but the problem is that going back to the miraculous of existence, right? Then the monotony of the day-to-day and the daily job and all these things, right, like the traffic jam and all these things, make you forget how special and awesome this place is. And I think that's a big part of the culture, is to make you lose sight of your own spirit. And when you were saying about like define what the spirit is, right? I don't have a precise definition of it, but I think you and I know. And when you mention about these this will to create and this idea, this joyful thing that is to be in groups of people who are akin to you, and this that sensation, that feeling that all of us know and long for, that's what the spirit is, and it's fascinating, right? Like when you read the Bible, right, and you read that when two or more of you get together on my name, I'll be present, right? Like, I think he's talking about exactly that spirit. Is that right? Is what you're doing is you're creating this psychological, this psychical creature, this egregore that is bigger than you, that is the aggregate or the collective of the people who are involved in it, and that's very satisfying in a way. Now, when you hijack that to control other people, then that's exactly what you do to exploit people, but it's not bad on itself. It's bad when it's abused by others, right, or by ourselves. But it's not that it's a bad thing. It's who we are. That's what our humanity is. But unfortunately, we can be domesticated, and we have been domesticated, and became domestic animals, right?
Yeah, moo.
Exactly.
Moo. So, hey, Nino, do you want to say anything or chime in here? Anytime, man. Anytime. If you're still listening, I got things to share. So.
Yeah. I want to say that, and I'm speaking directly to you, Mr. Barrera. Like you've helped me clarify reality. I might break down, so hold on.
That's all right, man. This is where this is. If anybody wants to know what spiritual is, this was the present we are witnessing was spirituality. That is allowing others in the small group that you're in to be who they are and say what they want to say, and not to and try to understand each other. So, and there's something magical that happens through that when we're willing to not. Go ahead.
There is a name for that in religion, right? That is communion.
Yeah, but they have made it artificial by the bread and the water, and they, made it almost symbolically cannibalistic, almost a way of devouring that. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that there are people that experience that, and it's not my right to diminish if they feel that, but it's not the same thing as having open dialogue between people.
Oh, absolutely. No, it's being hijacked, right? It's being hijacked by these power brokers. But what they're doing is they're prostituting these longing that we have for communion, for becoming one with the others, and at the highest level and purest level, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's allowing others to be who they are. And that's an experience that I have. This is one of the few great. Well, there's been some good lessons in music, and one of the things that I learned is early. Maybe it was through being a punker, but more of it is being the hardcore scene and all that kind of stuff. But was music is like I was in a band called Uba Tuba, and it was a very wonderful experience. I mean, I was in all sorts of other bands that were more contrived, and whether they were top 40 bands or Grateful Dead cover bands or whatever. But when I did this little project with two other guys, one of the things is, I would present bass lines and songs and lyrics and all that kind of stuff, but I was determined not to tell the drummer how to play drums and the guitar player how to play the guitar. I said, you just do what you want to do, man. And if you got something to share too, and we had some magic moments, spiritual moments through music, because we were just having that kind of dialogue we're having now, but it was through instrumentation. Unfortunately, we never really developed the kind of relationship we're having now, the three of us, and there were still a lot of psychological issues, but the importance of being intimate, sincere, exposing oneself, no matter how, so like you are a more technical man, you are more, even though you say that, you're not so good at the English language and all that kind of stuff, or whatever. I mean, you're clearly better than I am. You're more, you have your strengths, you know what I mean? Language is one of your strengths. That's not my strength, but that's okay. We can still try to understand each other. So, and it's really, this is what it comes down to with this whole, this is how I see it. And I want you to tell me as my instructor now, and this is why you're here, is to, when we look at alchemy and we look at the mystery schools, whatever, there's there's the element of mind control and controlling others, but then there's a deeper thing that we're experiencing right now, and that is truly
correct. And I think that has been captured and usurpated by religions, right? Like, so when you see the core, if you could strip out of all the myths and the misconceptions and everything, you could strip out Christianity of all that, and you see what it is. It's exactly that, right? Is finding the spirit in nature, in life, and I think that's the bottom line. And I think in alchemy and in all these systems, you have always have people who have been and had the best intentions, and what they try to do was to find and have a dialogue with this spirit, right? And find and try to understand the mystery. And as usual, there are all these other bunch of people who what they've been doing is trying to exploit that, right, for their own benefit. So I think these tools or this knowledge is neither good or bad, right? It's how you use it and for what intent you are learning this, right? It's to better yourself or to hijack others, right, and control others. But I think that's the problem with knowledge, right? Like, so you learn about the atomic nature of the universe, and then you can use that to create nuclear plants and give light and prosperity to millions of people, or you can use it to create nukes, right, or exploit, or same thing with TNT, right? Like, you can use that for good, and you can use energy and power for good or for evil, but the energy itself is neither.
I understand. Yeah, I can see what you're saying there. Where do we go from here?
Yeah, I have probably 10, 15 more minutes, and then I have to go.
That figures. Right when it gets getting going good here. Okay.
I know. We have to.
I'll send a bill to you.
We'll do it again.
No, I hope so. I hope we do a series. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to try and build back up. Sorry about that. This is emotional. But, yeah, thanks, Jose. Getting a grip on reality helps us destroy the illusion. And it helps us want to help others. And I've had a really shaky life until I had a kid. And I've never had any growth until I heard you just help me get a grip on reality. And I just want to say thanks. I'm sorry I'm breaking down, but, I mean, this is really important to me. And I want to know that you're really important to the world. So I'm going to, mute myself again. I just had to get those words out of my mouth.
No problem, brother. No problem, man.
Hey, man. Thank you so much to you, man. It's this is so beautiful. Thank you. I'm deeply honored, and I don't deserve that, really. Thank you so much. And anything that I can do to try to help you with what I have is all yours, man. Thank you so much. I'm so honored and scared at the same time to hear that, because I don't want that responsibility. You know what I mean? Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's just a mad world out here. For some of us, we choose really bad paths, and we have reverberating magic from our parents' bad magic, from their parents' bad magic, and I might have just ended up in just a bad situation from the start. And you know, I was born with a really rare disease. I was born to abusive parents. And I've always tried to destroy myself my whole life until I had a daughter. And then I went on a quest for knowledge because that's the only thing that calmed my mind down, even though I didn't know what was happening in my mind. So I'm not holding you responsible. Don't be afraid. I just got to say, you know, everybody's path's different, and mine, you've definitely helped me. You know, I'm trying to show the hole in the hat as you described earlier, because that's what helped me. Understanding reality helped me shed the fear that I feel is the complete weaponization of our minds and emotions. I'm not afraid of the things that we're bombarded with in the media. I'm not afraid of the things that are bombarding me with peers. The fear in my life is lowered a lot, and I was already fearless. Again, I was trying to destroy myself and my spirit my whole life until I had a kid. So being fearless and then adding the reality that there is nothing to be afraid of, almost, you know, in reality, I think that's they're re-weaponizing people like myself when we get the right words or the right language to help us. And I know language is ambiguous, but I mean, when we hear the right language, things change in our consciousness, in our spirit. You've added momentum, you know, and that's just kind of, you know, I the stuff I've heard when you describe magic was so eye-opening, and it made me forgive my mother for abuse, because she was probably a victim of her abuse, and it's just the resonation of the relationships we're stuck with. And you know, I'm not trying to say I'm a charity case worth worrying about. There's way worse off out there, but I have to worry about my paradigm and my contribution to society by raising my daughter, and by also poking a hole in the magician's hat. So I just wanted to add that. I feel better. I'm sorry I broke down, guys, but again, this is catharsis and cathartic, and don't feel terrified or anything. Feel whatever you want to feel. I don't want to tell you what to feel, but I don't want you to think. I don't know. You can help so many people just by talking and.
Dude, thank you so much. Thank you so much. This is what a wonderful gift. Thank you. Really, I don't deserve it. Thank you so much. I'm deeply honored, and thank you. And again, anything that I can do, and you just, with these words that you just said, you just validated everything that I've done. Now all of a sudden it makes sense. And thank you so much. I'll try to keep doing what I do. And thanks.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And hopefully you join us a few more times here. Definitely would like to let people hear your presentation without all the audio problems that you did, especially about the goddess of reason and that kind of thing. I also I think it'd be very interesting to do maybe some kind of application of what you learned with 9/11 in Manhattan and what happened, and the use of sorcery, black magic from the oligarchy, and I don't know if that's something you'd be interested in, but I think that would be a fascinating way of looking at it. Also, there's still a lot of things to talk about as far as in this three-dimensional reality we live in, with the endless amount of symbolism being forced upon us. And a fine example would be Washington, D.C. and all its symbolism and what the meaning behind it.
Excellent. Let's do it, man. I gotta go, but you can imagine this was very meaningful for me, and thank you so much. And let's keep doing it. I love it. We'll get again together.
Yeah. What do you do in 2 weekends from now? You free?
Yes. Let's talk in the meantime, and we'll get together again.
Maybe we'll try to do it in 2 weekends. So, yeah, it's a good thing. This will be our church, our Sunday worship. So, all right, man.
Okay.
Yeah, Jose.
Thank you so much.
Yes, you can. We'll talk to you soon. So.
Okay.
All right. Talk to you
Thanks.
later. And just for anyone else, he has a website out there. It's JosemariaBarrera.com. You can look at some of his essays and all that kind of stuff. And also, he has a YouTube channel, so you can see hear his insights. I don't know if he expected to have the show that we had today, but that's okay, man, because it's with all this esotericism and alchemy and all these different words, but ultimately it comes down to is having that's how I see it, is an understanding of self and operating in the world that we live in, and making the most of it. I know it sounds too simplistic, but I don't know what else to say. I mean, I'm a simple guy, and I'm not gonna. You know what I mean? I've had enough of conforming, so I want to be me, and I want to teach my son to be himself, and that it's okay to be who he is, and not to be feel the guilt and free his spirit from the oppressive environment that we live in, man, because it's just overwhelming. And especially if you have any kind of sensitivity, I think that he talks about feelings and how they're manipulated, but those feelings can be channeled into something very powerful as well. And look at like your past, it's like we got to try to make the best of it and make meaning out of it, and break the spell, the generational curses that the Bible talks about, or whatever other people talk about. And what are those generational curses? Well, a lot of it is just wrong thinking, man. It's just being totally screwed up by the environment that has been imposed upon you. So I don't know what else to say, man. Except that I hope he, I think that the 9/11 thing would be cool, and his presentation would be cool, and just try to understand a lot of the what is being thrown in our faces. And one of the things too is I think about one of the best ways to counteract all this is to create one's own language, if you will.
Yeah.
After understanding what's going on, is to create one's own world. It seems like we have this internal desire, a need to create our own world. Maybe it's because of the constant, the threats environmentally, the threats of other human beings, the threats of the environment itself. I don't know. I mean, I do know, but it's like, how do I say it? And that's where the problem, part of this language, right?
That's the whole thing, yeah.
Yeah. How do we communicate to each other what we're going through and how to break away from all that is oppressing us? And
Joe Will talked about making new vocabulary when I was interviewing with him. He brought that up at the end. He was talking about we need to just have our own vocabulary out there. And so, what I consider within arm's length reach in the internet world, that's exactly what's happening. And, when they come up with like lifetime actor and perpetual adolescence and all these ideas, like that's what we're doing. we're adding descriptors to the language that we're bathing in that may or may not more accurately describe the reality, but I feel they do accurately describe it, and that's why, like I said, this is at this point it's been so helpful to me in calming my mind that I need to share it with people, and I need to understand it for my daughter and whatnot. So
yeah. And we don't want to take our children down the wrong path. You know what I mean? And I saw that one of the funniest things was like this summer, and I was reading the Bible to my son. Of course, he's only 5 at the time, but he's like, "Dad, I don't want to do this," and it kind of hit me like a ton of bricks. And I'm like, I didn't say anything to him, but I'm like, he's right.
Yeah.
Why he's right? Why should I impose this upon him?
And you had nothing but great intentions too doing it. You were intending on the most positive intentions,
Yeah, but I kept, I see the oppressive nature of the book. I see it in those who write books and how that traps them and snares them and keeps them from expanding. It's like, and they get stuck. I figured it all out. Doesn't matter what it is. It could be religion. It could be how they understand the political system or whatever it may be. But if you keep on pushing and pushing, you're going to realize what you understood a year ago is half of it was, at best, was wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, if you're a guy that sells, several tens of thousands of books, and what do? Do you go, hey, I'm sorry, I was wrong about that. That chapter is pretty much worthless, and or the book, it went down the wrong direction. Do you, hey, what do? Do you say, hey, well, I'll give you a refund. I was wrong. Most people get ensnared in language. Language itself can ensnare us.
All of us. And
yeah.
that's again, that's part of me understanding reality. Is it's part of what I think I understand is it's the language we use. So when I talk to a couple of the other horses' asses on just private conversations, and we talk about the idea of God, I don't even know if Jose's talked about it in the talks I've heard of, but I try to explain to my perspective as it's undescribable. So like if the Bible says it can't be real because it's not fathomable. We don't know this stuff. It's not possible for us to know this stuff. So I don't know. That's, like I said, that's kind of the reality that I have to check in with. Is like, yeah, it's always the words because that's what we're bathing in is projections of descriptions of things labeled,
Yeah, that somebody else said this and you find out they're wrong, because they were in some kind of we allowed them to be in some kind of authority position, and it's at least for me, the more I just kind of go my own path, although it becomes more and more almost like a hermit type lifestyle. I don't want it to be that way, but at the same time, it allows a man to think and to question and to be. Maybe it's not so bad for us to be wallflowers in this environment that we live in. Maybe that's what the best that we can do. Also, the other thing is magic. This whole thing. How can we counteract their magic? What are the practical things that we can do?
I think we're doing it. I really do. Because again, if a real naked weapon against magic is to expose the illusion, I can speak for myself, and my stated internal goals is to show the contradictions of history and whatnot. So that becomes, okay, if there's enough contradictions, then it's inaccurate, then it's an illusion, and then the magic will collapse. So I think everybody, or not everybody, but whoever is truly committed to offering truth, that no matter what level of study they're at yet or will be, that's all them trying to shatter the illusion so that the magic trick collapses. And that's using Jose's word. Like, that's, so when I go on the air, like, I read books that kind of collapsed reality when I read Dave McGowan's work. When Jan, and I started watching Jan's work, it collapsed some realities. And then when I did my own personal research, like, the whole freaking glass building started to shatter. And then you have a presentation, an hour or two presentation of the history of magicians and magi and gubernate mente and the language of mind control and unveiling occultism and, the real root of words. Like, it slaps you in the face with, like, okay, there you go. And then you get some validation from Jose by saying, yeah, the illusion or the magic trip collapses when the kid in the front says there's a hole in the hat. That's basically what all of us are doing, I think, is trying to be that kid in the front row looking for the hole in the hat just to show other people. Whether we're on the right track or not, if we're just using language to screw up people's minds more, I hope that's not the case. Because, again, all these histories are just mental trappings of words and language. So we're built in this, pretty much everything's constructed of our consciousness off words, and that's so deep for me to think about and just really grasp. And people need to grasp those ideas. But yeah, I think
and the other thing is just to help each other understand that there's nothing wrong with us and how we see what's before us, and it's okay to question all these constructs that others have presented to us, define the contradictions, and to think clearer and to see clearer. So, but it is. Truth is a lonely warrior, and it's a journey that, if you could find a few that are willing to go down the path with you, you're lucky.
Yeah,
you're very lucky, and ultimately it's your path, it's my path, and you can't dictate my path, and I can't dictate your path. If we're truly trying to be as free as spirits as we can be. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of things to talk about. There's a lot of things as far as how the world and what it's presented to us through its, what are mystery schools? What are the mystery schools all about? Is it simply just mind control and just mind fucking the rest of us?
I think that's the case. It's like the passing of the secrets, but even they're being victimized with the language because it's being presented probably at some levels as like, if we, maybe not though, I don't know, but if we take for face value like the Morals and Dogma written by Albert Pike brings up Lucifer, and it brings up like Hinduism repeatedly, we get the impression that that's the impression they get, but it might be an illusion of an impression, so we got to sift through multiple things to see what they think. But I think in my personal guesses, which always change, like that's kind of how I funnel the mystery schools, secret societies, is they're basically, the secret is they know how to control minds with a ton of tricks. And just to quantify it, whether it's accurate or not, you get to the 33rd level of Masonry once you realize all the tricks of the trade, your intuitive devices are in line with their ideas, and they can trust you with the secret. I think you're at the top, and you're like, oh, it's really all about controlling millions of minds in league with these other magicians and mind controllers. I think that's my guess so far. Again, I'm not saying that's what it is, but that makes total sense to me.
Schooling us like a bunch of fish.
Yeah, and then the third level is down, like just going to punk rock. Again, I don't think most, like 99% of like the people we're talking about and digging up are in on the big picture, quote unquote, the big picture. But the magic resonates, and they believe their illusions, and the language and words they're constricted to address these topics are compartmentalized so that the conversation can only go so far, and they believe that shit. And then when you get emotionally invested into the magicians of the university, and then emotionally invested into the magicians of the authority, you're emotionally invested. You know what I'm saying? Like you're happy being in your bubble because of the validation of reality you may or may not have.
Right. Absolutely. Well, I tell you what, I'm going to end the recording here. We can still.
Yeah, I got to get going too. I called off. I said I'd go back to work, and I called in to do this. And I said if I got my thing done early, I'd come in and help out for the afternoon. So I think I'll just go do that and try and help my job out since I screwed them over.
or we could find it. The next time we do this with him, we'll find a way that it's not conflict with your work as well. So
that'd be awesome. But yeah, I probably wouldn't call off next time. But yeah, if it didn't conflict, I'd be honored. And like I said, I'm sorry I broke down, man. I was shaking the whole time listening to him, and a lot of it's admiration. Again, a lot of it's the only therapy that's ever helped, and not that I've invested tons into the Freudian, Jungian, systems, but I've invested a lot of thought into myself with limited ideas, and once he broadened my ideas, like I said, fear fell from my body, and it feels good. I got a lot more work to do, don't get me wrong, but yeah, so sorry I broke down. Next time I hope I can be a better contribution and ask him some good questions, but...
No problem, man. There's no issue with any of that. So yeah, it was very therapeutic. It was therapeutic for me too.
Good.
So it's ironic. It's pretty ironic, isn't it? But well.
It's awesome.
Okay, man.
Great.